Hello, everybody, and welcome to exercise 7, the last exercise of the semester. So, today we're going to be working through how to set up a view, set up materials, and finally take a render that we'll bring into Photoshop to add some entourage and a background of the Farnsworth house that you guys modeled. It's going to be really important for this assignment that you have organized layers. It'll make all of these material application things much easier. So without further ado, we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and open my file. Okay, so this is what everybody's files generally look like. I'm going to move over here to my Layers tab, and I'm going to go ahead and hide my photo layer. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and lock those two. And then under my drafting here, I'm actually going to create, or not under my drafting, sorry. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to name it camera. I'm going to switch over so that this is my main layer. And then drafting, I'm going to go ahead and lock all of these items so that throughout this process, I don't accidentally select and drag something out of place. We're just going to go ahead and lock our work that we've done. Okay, so now if we go to set view, or sorry, excuse me, display, we have all of these different display options. We have wireframe here. That can be handy if you're trying to grab something within a model and you don't want to hide things. Shaded is usually what I prefer to work in. Some people like the ghosted view. Let's see here. Some people like to work within this view where you can see through all of your layers. Today, I'm going to put us in our rendered view and ray traced. Ray traced is going to bog down your computer a bit more. So if it doesn't work well within ray trace, that's fine. We'll just stick here in rendered view. So rendered view is going to start pulling in all of our lighting settings, sun settings, and it's also going to show applied materials to this building. Today, we're going to be operating within Rhino 8's rendering software. At the end, I'll talk about a lot of different options you have for rendering. I know a lot of people prefer Twinmotion. I use V-Ray. It has a bit more complexity to the options. But we're just going to go ahead and use Rhino so you guys have a good baseline, and it comes with the program. One thing that Rhino does not have is assets. So there's no trees, there's no furniture, there's no scale people. All of that has to be added in post or within a different software. So that's why we do recommend getting another software. V-Ray recently, I believe, just bought out another company, and so their asset library is huge. And I just recommend using V-Ray. It's more complex. The learning curve is a little bit steeper, but you can get some better quality images out of it. Okay, so today we're just going to start applying materials. I think that I'm going to work mostly within what the Farnsworth house already looks like. So if we're just Google the Farnsworth house, it's all white, right? And we're assuming it's painted steel, aluminum mullions, perhaps some aluminum siding here as well, and then the wood floors and wood interiors. I encourage you to be creative. If you want to apply different materials to this model for this render, go ahead and go for it. I think that's completely applicable and fun. So the rendered viewport that we're going to do for this project is basically this here. So we're going to get an exterior view, and then we're going to add in this background in Photoshop, and then perhaps a tree in the foreground as well. We may take it from the front view instead of the back. I'll leave that up to you. Okay, so back to our model. I'm going to go to our rendered view here. And then basically we could, I don't know why it's doing that to me. One second. Okay. Now it's set. Okay, so basically what we could do is we could, if I unlock this drafting layer, I could start applying materials object by object. And I could do that by clicking on our properties, and then you can see these options that pop up that will go away. If I don't have anything selected, this property channel is different and has more viewport settings that we'll mess with later. But if I select this one object, these extra commands come up here, and this one here is material with the like paint tube. So we can click on that, and I can click down on this menu, and here's like the images that we've brought into the model, our default material, which is what is applied to all of these. Layer material, we haven't set those. We'll talk about that soon. Or we can do this plus icon. And then all these options come up. So these are some options that are preloaded into Rhino. So we got glass, metals, paints. We can also say import from material library. So when you downloaded Rhino, you can see it's underneath your Rhino file structure. It actually preloaded all of these materials that are basically just JPEG images. So for the roof, we could go to metal, and then we can decide on all of these finishes here. So let's say we want matte. Um, And then if I actually change here to icons, we can start to see what these look like. And so we're just going to say matte aluminum. Perfect. And you can see it changes within our rendering view as well. And then here you can see we have this option. You can add a bump texture if you want, if we wanted to add grit. That basically literally adds a texture to this. So the way that light is going to bounce off of this object is going to react differently because it literally has like bumps on it. So for now, we're just going to say none. But if you have like this is like a leather material, you can have things be speckled. If you want some more like light reflection and reflection basically in your render, you can mess around with that. And then you can change, do you want this to be high shine and you can see the reflection goes a little crazy? Or do you want it to be super matte and rough? We're going to pull it to maybe 35. Okay, something else I'm going to do quickly that's going to help seeing the reflection of these materials is I'm going to go ahead and type in sun, and I'm going to turn on my sun. Okay, and then intensity, we're going to leave set at 1. And then we can see right now that no reflection happened, but our model is actually set to a nighttime. So I'm going to drag it to June. You can see here our location isn't correct either. So I don't think that the actual town that the Farnsworth house is in is here, but I believe Chicago is. So we'll just say Chicago, Illinois. That's close enough. And so you can see if you find the latitude and longitude of this house, you could just put that in as well. I'm sure that exists online. So you could do that. For now, I'm just going to call this good. And it's going to pull this actual sun condition from this location. This comes in real handy when you're trying to do sun studies on your own projects. Put the actual site and your sun settings here and see what the sun is literally doing. Great for making diagrams and things like that. Okay. So now I can actually see, you can see the shadows starting to happen in this render as well. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to apply materials in these group settings that we already have set up. So I could, if I wanted to go in here one item, one at a time, and change the materials, but because we worked so hard on setting up these layers, I'm actually just going to go ahead and use those. So what I'm going to do is relock my drafting layer, and then you can see this material setting here. You might have to drag this window out to be able to see all of your options more clearly. If you drag that out, we can see for structure, we can go ahead and click on this here, and we can do that same process of choosing a material. So structure, we're going to go ahead and just say metal. And then, oops. Here, we're going to click on color. And then when you click on color off of this preset menu, you can see you can choose what kind of metal you want. So I'm going to click steel. And I think for my Farnsworth house, I'm just going to keep it the way it is. The all white metal and then the wood interiors. So feel free to get creative if you'd like, but I want it to be that white color. So I'm going to change it to white. I'm going to push OK and OK. And we can see our structure changed here. I'm going to do the same thing for my mullions. I'm going to say metal. And this one, I'm going to change the name to keep track of these materials, actually. So aluminum and white. I'm going to go to my color picker and I'm going to click on aluminum. And I'm going to choose that same white color here and press OK. We can see those changed as well. We can kind of see the reflection and refraction happening when we start rotating the model. All right, so now for the flooring here. As you can see, I unlock my drafting again. We want the sides of this to be aluminum, but we want this top layer here to be wood to match the interior. So what I'm going to have to do actually is explode this object. So what I'm going to do to make this easier is I'm going to isolate it. So I'm going to type in the command isolate with this floor plane selected. I'm going to press enter, and then I'm going to say explode. Go ahead and move into shaded so we can see it better. So now this closed poly surface has exploded into open surfaces. And so I'm going to select all of it. I'm going to deselect by holding Control and clicking that top panel. And then I'm going to type in join. So now I have these two separate groups, the top panel here and then the bottom one here. To show the rest of my building again, I'm going to type the command show. And then we're going to go back to our rendered view. Okay, so I'm going to select this bottom panel here, and I actually want to change it to the same material here. So instead of going here and going back to metal and selecting white again, because I already have this aluminum panel system here, I'm just going to go to this top. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select aluminum white and say OK. So now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to select this top layer here, and I don't want that one to be aluminum. So what I'm going to do, instead of selecting under these layers, I'm going to go to my properties panel like I should before. I'm going to click here on materials, click on this drop down, and I'm going to go here to add. So we can see here in the presets, there's no wood listed. So I could go to more types, and we can see there's still not a lot listed. Here's our existing. You could make your own. You basically just upload a photo and you can play with transparency and things. We're not going to do that either. What we're going to do is say import from material library, and then we find our wood textures down here. So when in doubt, if you can't find something preloaded, look in this library that Rhino already has. And we can see it has all these different kinds of woods that we can choose from in tones. I'm going to go to walnut. And I'm just going to do this first one, the walnut polished. Okay. So now we can see this texture has been brought in on the floor, but the way it's been mapped is wrong. The scale's all wrong. You can see when we zoom in. So now we need to fix this scale. So to do so, we're going to hover over here to texture mapping right next to our material application with this floor still selected. Okay, so this is going to give us a bunch of mapping options. Here you can like unwrap, apply surface mapping. So we clicked that and nothing really changed. Here you can, if you're trying to apply the material to a sphere, you can select this option. Here's like a cylinder. This one, you can set the X and Y axis lengths. What we're going to do is predominantly mess around with settings down here at the bottom. So here we have the sizing. Okay, so I'm going to click here too. For whatever reason, sometimes these don't work from these automatically imported. So I'm going to say click here to fix. So I want to say fit to original mapping here. And then what I've done is basically messed with the repeat here. So I'm repeating this texture over and over again to fit it basically to more of a believable standard. So that looks much better. As you can see, it actually looks like a wood decking. So what we've set it to, I'm going to clean up these numbers, is 5 and then 11. Perfect. And then if you wanted to rotate too, you could go here and say 90, and you can see that those wood panels flip the other direction. We're going to have to do some of that later, but for now, we're just going to leave it at 0. I'm double clicking onto these numbers to manually change them. The slides act a little funny sometimes. Okay, so now I'm going to do that same process with this one here. This one I'm not going to isolate because it's less complex, but go ahead and type in the command isolate and then show to show the rest of the model if you would like to do so. So I'm going to say explode. I'm going to hold control to deselect this top panel. You can see that that square grid goes away. I'm going to select join to join back together the bottom. I'm going to select the top here. And then I'm going to go to my materials here, the paint. I'm going to say use, and then I'm going to go down here to the walnut brown polish that we've already imported into the project. Perfect. And then we can see we've got to do something similar again. So we're going to go back to texture mapping. I'm going to click here to fit original object. And then I'm going to do repeat at 11, 5. Now we have the wood applied on both of those layers. Okay. I'm going to go back to my layers, or both of those objects, excuse me. I'm going to go back to my layers, and now I'm going to select my roof. I'm going to go down to my aluminum white and say okay. Walls here, we're going to go down and we're going to select our walnut polished. And then we're going to have to go in and texture map those walls to the wood. We'll do that once we're done applying the rest of these materials here. So for glass, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to select here the preset for glass. And now you can see we can see through that building, which is really nice. And having the glass here is going to add unique light reflections to the environment. And then you can see here our wood paneling needs a little bit of love for resizing those panels. Stair, I'm going to go here and I'm going to select our aluminum white, press OK. Perfect. And then furniture, I'm also going to select the wood. Okay, perfect. All right. All right, and there we go. A pretty basic material application of the Farnsworth house. We'll see how it starts to render out. We might change some things. What I am going to do at this point too, you can see my line work coming through here. I'm going to type in SEL and then CRV for select curves. And I'm going to type hide. That way all of our curves move away. What I'm going to do also now is select my walls. I'm going to say select objects, and then I'm going to type in that command once again, isolate. Perfect. Okay. So now we can see that most of these are mapped correctly. Let's turn it around here. So what I'm going to do before we explode this out is I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to edit the mapping on this object. So I'm going to grab my repeat, and I'm going to start pushing these out. Might just type in my 11 and then my 5 to see where that gets us. Okay. You can see we have a bit more ways to go. This one's going to be a bit more dramatic, it seems. So let's try 20 and 10. So we're keeping that similar ratio as the flooring. I'm going to type in show to see it against the flooring here. Right, and that looks pretty accurate. It looks like it just needed to be doubled. You can see the grain is lining up pretty well with the floor here. Okay, so now I'm going to get in here and edit this one. So this one we can see needs to be rotated 90 degrees. So I'll go over here to my rotation and type in 90. And now this texture needs to be edited. So we'll say 11 and 5. And that is acting really weird. So let's half it. Say 6 and 2.5. Up it until this grain wants to do something similar. Rotation seems a little bit off for some reason too. Maybe I'm crazy. Okay, yeah, I was just crazy. Maybe it's just the angle. Okay, so perfect, we'll do that. And then our fireplace here is actually going to be marble, I believe. So what I'm going to do is select these two objects, go here to material, click this plus icon, and then I'm going to go to import from material library. And then let's see. We go to, I believe, organic, perhaps. Nope. Miscellaneous, no. Okay, there we go. I was missing our stone for some reason. I'm going to go in here and say, I'll do the marble light and polished. Okay. Perfect. And then we'll go to mapping here. Do our 1-to-1. And then we're actually going to turn the repeat down for this one, it seems. Oh, click here to fix automatically so these rules start to apply. All right. That seems good. Perfect. we need to change the orientation of this one here. And this one looks like it all needs to be rotated 90 degrees. So instead of exploding it, we're just going to go over here and type 90. It's going to flip it. And then again, we're going to get in with this repeat. Oops, I deselected it. All right. So this is all that I'm going to have us do. We could get back here and start messing with the kitchen area, but because the render that I'm going to take is just from the front here, we don't actually need to come in and start really editing all of that other stuff. So what we're going to do before we set up our cameras is I'm going to look at the photo that I'm going to use to place this in so we can start to eyeball the angle that we need to be at for this home. So this is the image that we're going to place this house into. So you can see we're kind of uphill looking downward. So we'll get to see some of the wood. So something like this is going to be nice. Somewhat of a downward angle. Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to mess with our camera settings and make sure that the viewport that we're in is all good. So I'm going to shorten this. And then we're going to double click here so that we restore this view. And what I'm going to do is with perspective selected, I'm going to type in the command camera. And then I'm going to click here on show. And so now in all of these other viewports, if we set this one we have at the right, that's perfect. This one we'll put front is fine, and this one's perspective. So this is our point of view here, and then you can see literally the viewport created. What you can do is click on each one of these toggle points and start to edit the camera. This one edits the perspective of the view. This one here helps you drag. What is handy here is we can make sure that the height of our camera is about at the height of a human being. So the goal would be about 5.5 feet. Plus we're up on a hill, so we kind of have this overlooking perspective. If you took an interior render and you want it to feel as if it was a person viewing the interior of that house, you could take a line, type in your line command, click right here on this point, and then drag vertically and say, we'll say 5'5" for like the average person. Make sure we're on that blue line, and then we can see here is that 5'5" height connected to that viewport. And so we're going to say, based on the image that we're going to use, that that seems accurate. Click here. Since we're uphill, we're going to call that good. What we're also going to do with this camera here, I'm going to select it, have perspective selected. You can see here the lens length is at 30. The closest that we can get to human perspective is over like 20 to 25. So we're going to go ahead and change that. So we can see it moved a little bit further back, but it's going to look more like human perspective. Something else I'm going to play around with is having my perspective selected. I'm going to move here to view. And then, let's see. Under set camera, I'm going to say adjust lens length. That's going to have this zoom in and out toggle. And you can see it's not moving the view, but it's adjusting. Basically, like if you were standing in one position and zooming in and out with the camera, it's doing the exact same thing. So if we wanted to zoom in a bit more, we can do so, or we can get like this weird fisheye effect if we zoom all the way out. So I'm going to zoom in to about here and call that good. Flip this image again. Leave that's fine. Okay, perfect. All right. So now what I want to do so I don't lose this accidentally dragging or something is type in the command named view. That's going to pull up this window here. What I'm going to do is press this plus icon, and then I'm going to name this exterior render. Press OK. All right, so now if I take this and I accidentally move it around, if I press undo, it's not going to undo that viewport change that I did. So what I can do is go back to these named views here, and I can click and it's going to restore that view. And I can do that in any window and it's going to restore the view, but you can see it's not going to change the display settings here, which is nice. Okay. So with this set, now we're going to get into some rendering options and see how these materials look. We may go back in and edit a little bit, or you may decide to based on the materials that you chose, but this is where you just kind of get creative and mess around. I'm going to go through all the render settings and yap basically about what they all mean. A lot of them we're not even going to touch, but I want you guys to be aware. If you're ever really curious what all of these settings do, you can simply just Google Rhino 8 and say you want to know what dithering means or what gamma really means for an image. You can Google and it'll just tell you what those things do in photo editing, and then you can decide if it's beneficial for your project or not. Or you can just start messing around as well and learn that way. All right, so in the next video, we're going to dive into render settings.